What is happening, everybody? The Masters is going to be teeing off tomorrow morning on Thursday, and there are massive prize pools over on DraftKings and FanDuel, highlighted by $1 million to first place in a $10 contest over on DraftKings. And I'm going to throw out a little bit of a hot take here. I think that you might like winning $1 million playing DFS this week. Nothing confirmed, just kind of throwing that out there as a general assumption. In this video, I'm going to show you some ways to, can't guarantee it's going to happen, obviously, but to maybe optimize your chances of winning playing DFS this week. And if you do want to sign up for the golf packages that we have here at Stokastic, there's a link below in the description box. Any of our packages that are monthly packages, you could sign up and get yourself 40% off by using the promo code MASTER. So really big discount. We want to be able to get these tools accessible to as many people as possible ahead of the Masters. If you're interested in the tools I'm showing you on screen, sign up, click on one of those links below, promo code MASTERS, get yourself 40% off. Now, where everything is going to start here is with the contest generator. And not only am I going to walk you through the process I used to build out my PGA lineups, but also if you're somebody who just wants to know who are some of the best projected options in our sims for the Masters, that's going to be covered in this video as well. Because when we get to the end, we look at some of the lineups we built, I'll cover some of the exposures that I'm getting to. So I'm going to generate lineups right here. And a couple of things to note here is that the pool size here, I set it to 10,000. You can build up to 10,000 lineups in the contest generator. And that's generally the setting that you're going to want to put it on if you're playing in the largest of large field tournaments. If you do have our max package, you can build up to 10,000 lineups. If you are on our base package, you could build up to 500 lineups. And if you're somebody who generally plays more single entry, smaller contests, type stuff, then for that, you might only need to build 500 lineups. You're playing in a pool or a contest that has, 500, 600, 700 lineups, then you could just go ahead and build out 500 lineups to simulate, and you're going to be getting really good results from that. But if you are somebody who plays the very large 150 max contests where there are massive prize pools, I do like to build 10,000 lineups out for that. And then also you could change some of the contest archetype settings to gear some of the projected ownerships more towards the dollar buy-in amount you're playing in. So for things like the 150 max milli maker, that you're going to want the marquee setting. The marquee setting is going to be like any of the super large field tournaments that have really big prize pools that have tens of thousands to 100,000s of entries. Those are your marquee settings. The high stakes, those are going to be the contests that have the really high dollar buy-in. So think stuff like the $1,500 buy-in. Sometimes there's ones that are, $2,500 buy-ins over on DraftKings. Those are going to be your high stakes entries, and the low stakes, things that are like your dollar entries, your 25-cent entries. You'd want to select the low stakes setting for that when you build out the player pool. The reason that it makes a difference is because there's going to be different projected ownerships at each different buy-in level. If you got a golfer who might be, say, 25% owned in a milli maker, there's a good chance they're going to be differently owned in lower stakes contests. They're going to be differently owned in higher stakes contests. And we have different ownership projections for all different contest buy-in. So that's what you want to change this slider for some of those different contests you might be playing in. And then down here, you are going to see the exposure we got to of all the golfers in the lineups that I built out here. And for the purposes of the contest generator, you do want these pool exposures to be matching the ownership. And it's going to do this automatically for you. It's going to build lineups that are expected to match the field. The reason you want that to be the case is then when you go out and simulate the slate, you want to be simulating it based on what it is the field is expected to play. You don't want to be having a golfer in 40% of your lineups when they're actually only going to be 10% owned, because that's going to skew what the simulations think a golfer's ownership is. But if you do disagree with our ownership projections in any way, you could also customize that. So for example, we've got Scotty Scheffler here in 24.1% of lineups, the most popular golfer in the field for the Masters. But if you think he's going to be even more popular than that, you can give him up to 3 ownership boosts and then rerun lineups, and that would get him into more lineups in the pool. And once again, you only want to do this if you think that Scotty Scheffler is going to be owned higher than what we're projecting. And you can do the inverse as well by downgrading a player's ownership if you think they're going to come in lower than what we're projecting. So after you have everything set up here, the next thing I do is I go over to the simulation page to simulate out these lineups. And one thing of note you want to do on this page is make sure, well, number one, that you have the right site selected. If you're playing on DraftKings, you want DK selected. And if you're playing on FanDuel, you want FanDuel selected, but also the percentage payout to first. Once we simulate out all of the lineups we've built, it is going to simulate them in a tournament setting. And you want to make sure that the payout structure is going to mirror what it is that is actually on the contest you're playing in. So for instance, the milli maker, pulling this up to double check, but I'm fairly sure, well, I know for sure it's $1 million to first. and I believe it is a $4 million prize pool. Yes. So 25% to first, that's the payout I want to have selected, because $1 million, that is 25% of $4 million. And then after I have that selected, we move on to the next thing here, which is potentially customizing any projections here. So if you want to just leave everything as is, perfect. You don't have to change anything. It's going to default to using all the stochastic projections. If you want to change it, though, you could give golfers plus or minus arrows, and that will give them plus or minus 1 fantasy point. You could rewind it. You could also go in here and just type in a fantasy point projection. You can rewind that as well if you don't like it. Or if you have customized projections for all of the golfers, you could upload your own from a CSV, and really simple to do. You're just going to need to have 3 columns, one that says player name with the name of the golfer, one that says projection with your projection for the golfer, and then 1 column that says ownership for your projected ownership of the golfer. And then you upload that CSV, and that will automatically change all of these columns to what it is that you have projected. So after you have all that set, next thing you're going to want to do is actually run the contest simulation. Now, what is happening on this part of the Sims is all those lineups that we built out on the first page in the contest generator. We built out 10,000 lineups. They are now all playing against each other 40,000 times, and it's each individual time the contest is being simulated. It's all of the golfers are playing a round of golf, and each hole is being simulated individually. So we're having 18 holes of golf simulated 4 times for the entirety of the golf tournament. And that is going to happen 40,000 times. And what that is going to allow us to do is find out which of the individual lineups that are built in the contest generator are projected to be the best from a simulated ROI standpoint. So remember when we selected the 25% to first, so you're thinking about it, this is a contest structure where if it was $1 million to first place, all these lineups are going to play against each other, and then a lineup that finishes in first, it's going to get the first place payout for that. The lineup that finishes in second gets the second place finish payout. And then at the end, what the Sims tool is going to do, it's going to calculate all of the money that each of the lineups were expected to win, and then it's going to tell you the simulated ROI, and that's how those lineups are going to be ranked. And this takes not all that long. I mean, you guys are seeing it on screen while I'm talking here. To build out 10,000 lineups, it took about a minute. And then to simulate out all those lineups 40,000 times, that's going to take you another couple of minutes. So if you didn't want to make any kind of adjustments to any of the projections we have or anything like that, you really could build out 10,000 lineups and simulate them 40,000 times and then upload them to DraftKings or FanDuel all in the course of like 5 minutes. So all the lineups that we built out have now been simulated. I'm going to favorite the top 150 lineups here. And the way you want to have your lineup sorted here, which is the default, is by the simulated ROI. That is the all-encompassing metric that's going to tell you how each lineup performed across all of our Sims that we just ran. There's some other metrics in here as well that you might like to look at, stuff like how often lineups cash, how often they finished in top 10, how often they actually ended up winning outright in the simulations, and then what the projected fantasy points, as well as the projected ownerships in those individual lineups are. So now I've got all top 150 selected. If you wanted to, you could just export them right from here, and then you could upload them directly to FanDuel or DraftKings. But let's look a little bit more at the individual golfers that we got to, because I do know there's also a lot of people that just want to know, who should you play for the Masters? And that's something we're going to go over here in a second. Other tabs in here include the player ROI tab, where you could see in the Sims how profitable was each individual golfer in the lineups they were in. Favorites, this is just another tab to look at the lineups we favorited. And now here is the exposures, which is going to tell us who are the golfers that we actually got the most exposure to in that run of Sims. And this is going to be the golfers who either you're rooting for or you're rooting against based on how much exposure we have to them. So right off the bat here, you guys are going to see we have the exposures for the individual golfer in the top 150 lineups that I favorited, the projected fantasy points for each of those individual golfers, the projected ownership, and then the leverage, which is just the difference between the golfer's exposure and then what the projected ownership is, which is the pool ownership here. So if we look at the core plays, the golfers that I wound up getting to the most based on this sim run, 3 golfers in north of 30% of my lineups: Rory McIlroy, Corey Connors, and Bryson DeChambeau. And of these 3 golfers, none of them crazy contrarian or anything like that. Corey Connors, the lowest owned, coming in at 13% ownership. We do have Rory project for just over 20% ownership, then Bryson here at 15%. And if you guys do want to see just our fantasy point projections, I'll hit on that here as well. Nothing really massively surprising. Scotty Scheffler projected for the most fantasy points in the field. I mean, you got a guy who's anywhere from like plus 400 to plus 550 at different sports books. yeah, he's going to end up being the highest projected golfer in the field. So in terms of our top projected golfers, it is Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Xander Schauffele, and Joaquin Niemann. As far as our highest owned golfers, based on our ownership projections here, it is Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Hideki Matsuyama, Rory McIlroy. Those are the 4 golfers we have projected for north of 20% ownership. And then with it being such a loaded field, the ownership is fairly spread out. It's not like there's any one golfer we have projected to be like 40% owned or anything like that. Some of the tournaments where Scotty Scheffler's been like 2-1 to win outright or some kinds of those, crazy odds, we've seen much more condensed ownership. Not quite the case with the Masters. So only 4 golfers project for north of 20% ownership. Then you guys will see there's a bunch of golfers here projected in the teens. So I'll just scroll through this. So if anybody does want to just pause and look through any part to see our projected ownerships on individual golfers, you could do that as I'm scrolling through everybody here. And yeah, there we are at the bottom there. And then if we go to our exposures again, not only do we have these golfers in north of 30% of lineups, so I want to look for some of the contrarian golfers who are projected for really low ownership that the sims are giving me to really differentiate some of these lineups. So one golfer that really stands out here is Hojgaard. He is in 23% of my lineups as a very contrarian option. You see here only projected for 3.7% ownership. And then Will Zalatoris, another one. Zalatoris projected for single-digit ownership. He is in 19% of my lineup. So those are the 2 single-digit owned golfers that are showing up in the most of my lineups if you're looking for some super contrarian plays, like we said before, to differentiate some lineups. And now as we keep scrolling down, is there anybody else? Yeah. Moronk projected for 6% ownership. He's in 14% of my lineups. And then Patrick Cantlay. If you guys want to pay up for a golfer and maybe differentiate from like Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler, I am a little bit overweight to Cantlay, getting him in 14% of lineups, and he's projected for 10% ownership. But now with that said, Scotty Scheffler is in 25% of my lineups and McIlroy in 31%. So I am prioritizing them more across the lineups that I have built here. If we look at the leverage here and look at who are the golfers that I'm most overweight to on the whole, it is going to skew obviously towards the golfers that we've already talked about that I have the most exposure to, but still look at the ones that I am at least 10% overweight to, and they are Bryson DeChambeau, Hojgaard, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Cam Young. Those are the 5 golfers that I'm most overweight to, and then Rory McIlroy and Will Zalatoris right behind them. As far as golfers I'm most underweight to in this run of lineups, I'm coming in underweight to Hideki Matsuyama, Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, and then Russell Henley and Justin Thomas up here as well. Some big name golfers that I'm not getting to as much as the field is, but kind of the nature of how it goes, right? I mean, we can't roster every single golfer overweight to the field because, well, that would just be impossible. Or I'm playing too many golfers in an individual lineup, which also impossible. So that is the way that you guys could look at the individual golfers that the sims are giving you the most of. But if you ever are looking at this and you want to customize it, like maybe you have built out your lineups and you see like, hey, I'm underweight to Hideki Matsuyama only in 3% of lineups, but maybe you really want to get to more of Hideki Matsuyama. You go to the ROI boost. You could go to Hideki Matsuyama and you could ROI boost him, which what this is going to do is it's going to take every single lineup with Hideki Matsuyama and it's going to add ROI to it. So that is going to make it so we could force more of Hideki Matsuyama into lineup. So let's just give him a 20% ROI boost. And then we go back to the lineups and then you could unfavorite them, refavorite your top 150. And now we'll go back over to here and we'll see what our new exposure is to Matsuyama. And you'll see that we went from 3% exposure to Matsuyama to about 17% and got close to even with the field. So if there's ever a golfer that you just have a really strong feeling on, or you just want them in more lineups than what the sims are giving you for whatever reason, it is fully customizable. You could change any of the exposure getting to the golfer by changing the ROI boost here. And the inverse works as well. So you see right there, we did a positive ROI boost to Matsuyama, but we could do a negative one as well. So let's say that you just maybe you don't want to play live golfers for this event, or you think Bryson DeChambeau is going to suck at the Masters. We could go into Bryson. You could go, all right, negative 30% ROI boost. Same deal. Go back to your lineups, unfavorite, and then refavorite. And we should have quite a bit less of Bryson now. Yeah, Bryson is now in... just 0.67% of lineups because we gave him the negative 30% ROI boost. So if you don't have to do a super excessive ROI boost, if you just want to do 5 or 10% to just slightly change the exposure to golfers, you could do that as well. So these are the tools that I've used to build my golf lineups this year, and it's helped me be profitable at PGA DFS, which had not been the case for me in the past prior to using Sims tools. I was somebody who was not great at PGA DFS, and this has allowed me to now start making money playing PGA DFS. So if you guys found this video helpful, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you want to sign up for our PGA package, now is the time to sign up. We got the Masters promo. Like I said, sign up using the link below. Get 40% off when you sign up with the promo code Masters. And this deal is going to be ending tomorrow morning. So last chance to sign up for the 40% off. Thank you guys very much for watching. One more time, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Good luck. If I don't win $1 million, I hope one of you guys does this week. Peace out and enjoy the tournament.